talking much today.
Oh, you're quieter now? You're a quieter gentleman? Gotcha.
I'm retired.
I am too. Look at us.
only gave it
I'm
3 minutes.
retired.
All three of us are retired.
And I'm looking around.
Live.
I don't see any lines in y'all's face. What happened to me?
Nothing. No lines. I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, I was looking forward to this conversation, to seeing you all, and to reminiscing about some of the things that we did here and how it affected the rest of the state that we're proud to be part of.
Ever since the beginning, we have never stopped turning dirt at BMW. So it is a seed, and the growth is just phenomenal.
People would ask me, what's it like to work for BMW? And I said, well, we make high-performance cars, and it's a high-performance workplace. Mm-hmm. And if you can't keep the pace, you're going to fall on the wayside.
That's kind of like readySC.
And it pretty much, it never slowed down.
Failure is not an option. It was a baptism by fire a lot of days, but
and drinking from a water hose because it took collaboration, it took partnership.
That goes to the whole team thing. I mean, we really have known each other for years, and
I can't thank readySC enough for your flexibility, your support, your commitment, your dedication to this project, because it was eyes on this project every day, all day
long.
So it's been the most remarkable project in South Carolina, and we have had just a basket full of remarkable projects since. But this was the change agent.
It certainly was.
This was the change for South Carolina. Well, it was exciting for me, because my perspective was, here is this remarkable company coming to South Carolina. And I was in the background before it was announced. So I was meeting with the planning department, and I'm a reporter. I mean, I can't help but want to know, what's the real reason we came to South Carolina? And the guy looked at me and says, well, you got the two most essential ingredients in car manufacturing. He says, you have a remarkable technical education system. This is true. I'm not making this up. And you have the ability to help people create the skills necessary to build a car. And we've looked at all the other states. And I'm going to tell you, at the time, they were telling me, the Germans, that our system in South Carolina was head and shoulders above everybody else. We've always touted readySC as a strong program, but here was a validation by a third party, and I was pretty impressed with that. So he says, you have the ability to create skill, and that's an essential ingredient in car manufacturing. And I said, what's the other one? And he said, it's emotion. It's an emotional product. And we rode around the neighborhoods and we saw how people kept their yards and how they maintained their houses, and it told us that people here are very prideful. And if you mix skill and pride, you get a craftsman. Absolutely. That's what we were looking for. And in fact, what we found with South Carolinians was that they were remarkably adaptive to this work and emotionally attached to the product.
So that was an attraction unto itself. BMW coming to South Carolina, and at the right time, because textiles was going down.
Had gone down,
and
hard.
We picked up there, and it has been.
Do you guys remember the presentation that Ben Davis from the Employment Security used to do about the net loss of textile jobs and the net gain in the automotive sector?
Right.
And it was almost equal. I mean, it was so close to equal. And I remember thinking, good Lord, if BMW had not located here, what would we be doing here in the upstate of South Carolina?
Right. One of the things that I was thinking about as one of the concerns at the time was, can textile people, can they actually build cars? The one thing they forgot was the resilience of our people, and the fact that textiles taught them
show up to work,
repetitive work,
physical, mechanical.
Exactly. So all our people wanted to know is, what do we need to do? How do you want it done? We will get it done.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we started out with the world media saying that BMW had made this fantastic mistake. They had termed us almost like a third world country here in South Carolina. And I got a call from a reporter for the International Herald Tribune. And his opening line to me was something like, could you tell me why a sophisticated company like BMW would locate in some a backwater place like South Carolina? And, my dad used to always tell me, rather than being angry, humor works pretty well. And I said, well, after we got these boys and girls wearing shoes, they turned out to be pretty good automakers. And the community was amazing toward us. When we were very early days, we decided to get everybody a T-shirt. And it said BMW on it. And so, like 100 people got these T-shirts, 150. And if people were in the mall wearing that T-shirt, people would come up to them and congratulate them like they had won the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
The level of excitement
true.
in this community
That's true.
over BMW choosing South Carolina was unfettered. I mean, it was amazing.
When we used to do those pre-hire classes, and Bobby, I know you'll remember this too from our work with other prospects, they were like, oh, no one's going to come to these pre-hire classes. We came to those pre-hire classes with bells on.
Oh, yeah.
We wouldn't even have the room set up, and they'd be in there like twiddling, like, when am I going to start? When am I going to start? And that quality about our workforce, Sky, has been, for me, one of the great gifts of working in economic development in South Carolina, that South Carolinians really were willing to.
They want to work.
Yeah, and wanted to take that extra mile. Well, and if you recall, there were multiple training centers too,
Correct.
that just because of the sheer volume of.
You may recall,
Of folks.
60,000 people applied for the jobs at BMW. It was like, oh my God.
And there was no electronic application process then. Like an Excel spreadsheet or a database. The things that we had to do were extremely manual.
Yes.
And that, and I know Sky knows this very well, that applicant pool was the size of a small city. And so any things that could take place in a small city could take place in that applicant pool. I mean, it was a lot.
Exactly.
And all of it was fairly complicated. I remember the first sheet, I saw a process sheet for hiring.
I think at one point there were 20 steps in it.
Oh, wow. I just remember it being about
Before
10.
you even got to the point where you might be in the plant.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why dwindling down that the steps that were there, that were in place,
Yep.
I think at the time was necessary just to make sure you got to the right person, because
Absolutely.
this was huge. And the expectations for BMW in South Carolina
Were
were
huge.
high.
Unbelievable.
So we didn't want to wave on any talent. We wanted to make sure that we had the right person do the right thing
At the right time.
at the right time.
In addition to that, we were very focused that we were going to have a diverse workforce.
Oh, absolutely.
And we were going to.
Did a great job at that.
The great reality is the German culture gave us the tool we needed to have the diverse workforce, in that we measured every month. Every month, this lady or someone came into senior management and said, these are our numbers. And we worried about those numbers, and we wanted those numbers to be correct. We wanted the inside the plant to look like the outside world that we were in. We were starting. We have a fresh piece of paper, so to speak. And if we just pay attention and we decide this is what we want to do, we should be able to do it. And we did it. And it was pretty remarkable.
It is
The
remarkable.
community that
Yeah.
we live in.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
And then I think what we also learned from you all is that a startup is an incredible opportunity to take the best of the mothership and then add whatever it is that you want to add to that. And I think we were able to bring a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't have done in Germany, but we could do them here because we were fresh and brand new.
We weren't so concerned about problems, because that's what we do every day.
Problems every day.
Problem is a
That's why
day,
we're
yeah.
here.
We
That's
have
why
to
we're
figure it out and make it
Move
work.
on.
And then it may change tomorrow, but you have to change with it.
Yeah.
So you have to be flexible and agile, as we say, as a part of our mission, and we really mean it.
We had the right people, we had the right resources, and I will say this in all compliments to Sky. I often would cite her as the perfect point of contact. You know how, Bobby, we would always talk about in prospect presentations, we need a single point of
Single
contact.
point of contact.
And Sky was my single point of contact. She really did that job well, because there was no problem that we couldn't talk about and say, all right, I'm going to talk to these folks on my side, and she would go to talk to whoever and then we could come back and solve the problems.
The other piece of complexity that we had, Bobby, and you know so well, when we hired non-automotive people.
Right.
We hired automotive people. We hired people with the Japanese team influence.
Very
Right,
different.
We
right.
hired several people from different automotive OEMs.
Correct.
And trying to blend all of that together
Yep.
to get this done, because everyone felt that they knew the best way to
Right.
do
To make a
something.
car.
So how do we blend this? Because it was a huge challenge.
It was a challenge. And so we had external issues we had to deal with, to communicate
No
with,
question about it.
as well as what y'all were working on. The political view from my side, as the political guy, was, South Carolina gave us these incentives, which we were getting beat up for at the time. and we should be hiring South Carolinians.
Right.
And so we actually said we were only going to interview people who had lived within the 50-mile radius on the day that the project was announced. So if someone
Which
moved
limited,
in,
which was-
they weren't included.
And to your point, I mean, we frequently had folks spending the night in the parking lot of the training center in hopes that, that we would take them on as applicants because they lived in Montana or they lived in.
Right,
I mean,
right.
the energy behind this project went far beyond that 50 miles.
Correct.
And so making that commitment to the state and to the taxpayers, that it was huge. It was huge in terms of how smoothly this project ran.
At the same time, we had a lot of corporations in the upstate that were very anxious.
Yes.
There were concerns that whatever we did was going to change all the wage scales and change the whole dynamic of the upstate. And our team organized an event where we brought the CEOs of most of the major companies in the upstate together to tell them what we were going to do and what we were going to pay and what our takedowns were going to be and so forth and so on. And it was fascinating because it worked. And everybody was calm because they realized, we're only going to hire a few hundred people to start with.
I think that eased
But it eased them. And also,
They were thinking, you're not taking my entire work.
correct.
Exactly,
And we
exactly.
also made sort of an informal pledge. We will monitor it and we will not take too many from anybody, but we're not coming to your house to recruit your workers. If they come to us, we will try to moderate how many of them come at one time. So we couldn't have done it without the training. And of course, readySC or Tech Special School
Was it what it
called
was
at the time. I mean, it was the key
Absolutely.
because you got to put the car together.
They were the bit of this organization in terms of designing, customizing the training that we needed, because the question you'd ask is, what does success look like?
Right.
What do you want? How can we deliver it?
I can remember looking at your training plan. There would be a time every year where we would sit down and we would look at what needed to be accomplished.
And we'd all get together, heads together, and we need this, and this, and we design with the technical colleges, and all of a sudden you have a program.
Yes.
And it's customized.
We worked together for almost 10 years on that project. So
I would
we're
say.
talking about a lot of conversation around what's needed, what's needed and how do we deliver it? Because what needs to take place to build in a high-tech environment is pretty comprehensive.
And you were flexible enough to where if, we need to tweak it a little bit, then we tweak it a little bit, because it was trial and error. You really want this, you really need this. The product will drive you into the direction that you really need in terms of how to train the individual. So it was just a phenomenal partnership.
And one of the things that I think you all brought to the table, which ended up being really important for labor force in South Carolina, is the idea of soft skills. It's never been my favorite term, but those skills that go beyond the technical skills. I feel like for readySC, our first foray into understanding the culture of a company, what makes that company run in its heart. We really worked with you on doing that. So things like problem solving, communications, team building,
Effective meetings.
Oh yeah, how to attend a meeting. 'Cause
Exactly.
we were having people come in here who've been on a plant floor, never been in a meeting in their life.
Which was a huge empowerment for the workforce on
Correct.
the floor.
We wanted high performance work teams.
Yes,
And
yes.
speaking of soft skills, this curriculum was designed for 1 year of full training for every associate.
I see that graphic in my mind.
Yes. And to pull that off with hundreds of associates having to plan, the work still has to be done on the line.
Yep.
So we had to pull a few people from each work cell and have the classes established, but 1 full year was your curriculum on soft skills. That's how important it was to have high performance work teams.
The other thing that sat at the middle of it was a policy that I had never encountered any other company before. It was called dignity for the individual. So if I got mad at you and I cursed at you, I better hope nobody else heard me, because the cops would come. Well, my point is we can't build the finest product in the world if we can't talk with each other. That's why communications,
How we talk to each other.
Communications was important. I got to be able to talk to this person and
Exactly.
say, hey, we got a little problem here with the gas cap thing. Rather than this person saying, that ain't my problem, that's your problem.
That's the reason for those soft skills.
Yeah, so that's why the soft skill was so
Well,
important.
and we ended up taking it, the collective we, taking it further, if you guys will recall, because we also extended that same core curriculum on the soft skills side to your supplier network.
Oh, absolutely.
So that essentially you had folks that were working off-site that had comparable skills in terms of communications, team building, and things of that sort, which was a remarkable addition to the workforce in the upstate.
Oh, there he is. I just found it.
It's one of the proudest moments I think I have and our connection together as we have gone through this process was walking into the plant as we're beginning to build the very first car.
Yeah.
And for me, it was an aha moment. It was a high five moment. It's like, we did this.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it. We hired the people. They were trained in Germany. Now they're here
And here's a
building
car.
the first car. And emotional, you're talking about
That still
emotions.
gives me chills.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Came off the line, that first car came off
I remember.
the line. It was one of the proudest moments for me. And then to celebrate that moment, we were on the stage that night for the BMW opening ceremony.
Yeah, we had the whole plant was on the stage.
Plant was on stage.
Right.
But
Yes,
it
yes.
was a perfect night. The temperature was just right. The sky was perfectly starry, and the ceremony was beautiful. And for me to drive the first car out
Yes.
on
She did.
stage,
Yeah.
it's a moment that I will never, ever, ever forget. And passing those keys over to Dr. Ponca, it was wonderful.
You had to drive up an incline with a stick shift with lights and smoke in your face. And they didn't tell me I had to land on an X on stage. And my concern, I couldn't see the X, but I could see the Quant family sitting on the front row and thinking, I cannot hit them.
It was a terrifying moment for me in that event that I've never talked about publicly, but now's a good time. And we had a big video screen behind the stage. We had lighting and AV and everything. There wasn't enough power in this building to run the show that we were putting on. So I had to bring in power. So we found these generators that they use on movie sets that are called whisper generators. They make no noise.
Really?
But they're running a gasoline engine and they're generating power. And we parked them right behind this Entrum in what is now the parking lot there. And I was just terrified about the whole thing. We got so many variables, and we had 13 stations broadcasting live from here. And we closed down the interstate because of the fireworks, because we figured people would run off the road. I mean, it was a major event, a lot of stress on my team at that time, and certainly on me. And so I'm just walking around, worrying about stuff. And I walk up to one of these generators and go, wow, that really is quiet. And I open the door, and the engine's running. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And then I looked at it and went, oh my God. It had Mercedes-Benz engines in it. I shut the door, did the handle, turned around to one of my staff and said, get over to the hardware store, give me a couple of padlocks. Because all I could think of is Dr. Ponca or one of those would come by and open the door like me out of curiosity, how quiet that is, and see that Mercedes engine. And then I'd have to go work for Kia.
Exactly, or something like that.
One other thing that I think dramatically impacted all the people in the plant, because we were still small enough that when we did things, we brought everybody together. So in 1996, when we launched the Z3, and we did the worldwide launch from here, the chairman of the company came over at the time, Mr. Streeter. We had everybody in the cafeteria, about 500-600 people. And he basically got up and praised everybody for all the work they'd done to get to this point to start. And he said, now you've got to do it every day, and you got to do it faster and better. And oh, by the way, the whole world is watching, and the fate of our company is in your hands. And the emotion in the room was like,
pressure.
you could see the blood running out of people.
No pressure.
But it impacted us because we were doing something that no one else had ever really done on the stage in South Carolina. We were presenting something that would, in fact, become part of the image of South Carolina. And the Z3 was it. And what a snazzy little car to do it with. And it was magical, quite frankly. And all of a sudden the world press went from can they make it good enough to can they make enough? And no one's ever criticized this plant again. But it's amazing today when you realize in our first full 12 months of production, we made 28,000 cars, and we thought we were stuffed.
Right.
We were stuffed. Now we make 28,000 cars every 2 weeks, I believe. Something like that. But
Yeah, I was just about to say.
it's almost hard to believe that on a given work day, there can be up to 10 or 11,000 people on this site. That's just mind-blowing. And then you go over into our supplier system, which is about 30,000 people. So between this one project, there's 40-something thousand people employed in South Carolina at a higher manufacturing wages. And as a result of it, it started attracting other automotive. So when we started, there were essentially no automotive manufacturing assets in South Carolina. Today, there are 500 automobile manufacturing related companies doing business in South Carolina.
The other thing I would be interested in hearing from you all, after we were able to kind of look at it and say, you know, we're in good shape here. This is a finely oiled machine. What we began to notice is that it wasn't just our state that was interested in what we did. It was our competitors as well.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, really the project that we did here helped to bring automotive, in my opinion, and that's why I'd like to know how you feel about it, to the Southeast. We got calls from our competitors after their announcements to say, could you help us understand what it is that you did? Did you see any of that from your seats?
Of course. I mean, our competitors actually came here.
Came here and went through the plant.
Right.
To our training center.
We had to get permission to bring them here.
Exactly, it was
No, we had to get permission.
challenging, but yeah.
But they were so interested in how we did it that they wanted to visit. And one visit after the other every week of our existence. People
Pretty much.
coming here
Pretty much.
to see
Pretty
what's
much.
going on, from reporters to media. I think we were always in a state of possibility.
Correct.
What's possible? What's next?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I will also say, when Boeing was looking, they came here and they looked at what we did in this factory and they went, yeah, we can do it here.
Yeah.
So we became a validation.
My old colleague Kathy Neely used to say the best part about a readySC job is you can drive around and you can see what your impact is in the community. And I think that's the gift we've been given, you know, to drive down 101 and say, did you think this would look like this?
No.
It's so exciting to go downtown Greenville or Spartanburg and you hear the different languages.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, you're right.
Spanish and Italian and French and German
and Chinese.
and Chinese and all the cuisines around that goes with those languages. It has literally changed our community. And I take pride in knowing that BMW had a little staple in making that change.
The point is we demonstrated to the world what South Carolinians can do, and it doesn't need to be demonstrated over and over again. It's been demonstrated. So we build very sophisticated stuff here now.
It gave me personally, and I believe my colleagues as well, an incredible amount of confidence.
Right.
That it was doable. And I will say also that the learning that we took away stood us in good stead when we, you know, worked with other large companies. It's like, okay, we get this, we understand.
We would have never, and I use the we for meaning South Carolina, we would have never pulled off Boeing had we not pulled off BMW. But the secret sauce from my point of view as the recruiter was readySC. And that I would tell people, if you come here, we were recruiting people from halfway around the world. I mean, we led the country for most of the last 10 years, and we're in the top 5 in international recruitment. So we had a lot of international companies. I mean, just look up and down the interstate here. And they came here because we showed the discipline that we could build a workforce to make them money. And that's what I would tell them. If you come here, you invest in South Carolina, and we will invest in our people, and we will train them to make you profitable. And that's what we've done.
You all and your company took up the mantle of being a citizen of South Carolina as well. Isn't that the end goal? I mean, isn't that what we want for every company that comes here?
We built ourselves into the fabric of these greater communities, and it stayed that way, and I think it's still that way today.
And they developed a term that you came up with, proud to call South Carolina.
Proud to call South Carolina home. And that sort of drove the whole concept of what our community relations and what our community communications and everything should look like, and what the personality of BMW should be. And in fact, I would used to say that we sort of became a bit of a hood ornament, you know, for the state, and the two brands are inextricably tied.
And you know, I'm just going to say this is going to sound a little I don't know, sentimental, but I live pretty close to this plant.
Yeah.
And, across time, I still drive by and say, wow, it's just amazing what it's brought to this community. I mean, it does make me a little South Carolina proud.
BMW was the high hill that changed South Carolina. This project was the high hill that we had to conquer in order for everything else to occur.
I agree, Bobby.
Prior to BMW, we did not have the level of energy we have had now for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And the success, if we had failed, oh my God.
Oh, it would.
But if the success of BMW changed South Carolina, we went from the little engine that couldn't to the little engine that could, and all of a sudden, we didn't believe anything was out of our grasp as a state.
And I still think we're still in the beginning. I don't believe we have seen yet what this company is going to do for the world. I mean, it's an exciting place to be.
Oh, it was terribly exciting. And, and it was also personal for all of us.
And I think about what a gift it was to me. The lessons that I learned here and the people that I worked with held me in good stead professionally for the rest of my career.
It was just an amazing place to work, and amazing relationships were built here that transcend time.
Yeah.
And the reality is everybody won.
Yeah.
Well, and our lives have been changed.
We weren't afraid of problems and trouble. We had them head on, and we did it.
Yeah. And we all must have done okay because we all made it all the way to retirement.
We didn't get kicked off.
We didn't get kicked off the team.